Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. It is my great pleasure and honor to be here today with composer Dennis Alexander. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you, Sam. So nice to be here.
Excellent. Today, I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about you as a composer so that we can get to know you and learn a little bit more about your compositional journey. So, did you come from a musical family?
My father played the piano when he was young. My mother did not. They both loved music, so I grew up in a household that was constantly playing music. It wasn't classical music. It was big band music. I was fortunate that both of my parents loved music. Well, I grew up in a little tiny town of 200 people. When you're in a town that small, there's not much going on. So every Saturday night, we would gather around the TV and watch the Lawrence Welk show. And one of the performers on that Lawrence Welk show that always inspired me was a woman named Joanne Castle. But she always had so much fun when she would walk out on stage and sit down at that piano. And I always just thought when I was 7 years old, if it's that much fun to play the piano, that's what I want to do when I grow up. So that's really kind of how I got interested in actually taking piano lessons.
What a cool inspiration. What was your first introduction then to music once you got into those lessons? Talk to us a little bit about those experiences.
I had a fantastic first teacher. I will always be grateful to her. And one of the things that I recall that I perhaps appreciated the most was the fact that every lesson, at some point in the lesson, she would sit down next to me and improvise a duet to go along with my little pieces I was playing. And of course, I couldn't believe how wonderful I sounded when Mrs. McCune was playing along with me. But when I look back on those early days of my first lessons, I now realize that what she was really telling me or teaching me was to listen. I had to watch what she did. She literally taught me keyboard choreography. I had to keep going no matter what. I think learning how to listen to someone else while you're playing, developing keyboard choreography, and all of those particular skills were so valuable as a young student. And I'm so grateful to her for getting me off to such a wonderful start and for mostly instilling just a tremendous love of music from the very first lessons. I had very good teachers all the way through my education, so I was very, very fortunate.
Oh, that's really cool. I love how you had such an awesome, nurturing teacher who provided you with such an excellent musical example of how to
Yes.
be at the keyboard. How and when did you start composing?
My composing career was an accident. I never aspired to be a composer, Sam. I was a piano performance major. I simply wanted to teach. I wanted to perform. My degrees were in piano performance. It never occurred to me that I would ever become a composer of educational materials. I never studied composition in college. Of course, I had theory and oral perception and counterpoint. Those were subjects I, of course, had to take as a piano performance major. And it all came about through my association with Amanda Vick Lethko. She and Willard Palmer and Morty Manus, who was the president of Alfred, put together the Alfred's Basic Piano Library back in, I believe it came out in 1981. And about 5 years after that method came out, she asked me if I would consider helping she and Willard Palmer show the method. I initially said no. I I felt everybody in the universe knew Amanda Vick Lethko. They all knew Willard Palmer. And if I were to walk into a clinic where teachers had no idea who I was, they would probably be very disappointed. And so I said, I'm delighted that you would ask me, but I don't think, I don't think so. Well, she kept persisting, and she said I needed to meet Morty Manus sometime. So I ended up finally getting up the courage to fly out to Los Angeles and met with Morty Manus. So he asked if I would consider doing a round of workshops just to kind of test me out to see, first of all, if I would be received well by the teachers, and then also to find out if I even would like doing this. So I did a whole summer of workshops, and one of the first workshops I did, Morty and his wife attended and asked if I would be willing to write the duet books for the method because Willard didn't have time to write them. I told Morty, I've never written a thing in my life. And he was shocked and said, well, goodness. He said, why not? I said, nobody's ever asked me. But somehow I knew that I could do this. I had taught piano pedagogy. I knew the materials. I also have always played by ear. I've always improvised. There was something about my background that was telling me, oh, yeah, you can do this. So I agreed with great intrepidation. And I, I sent the first book to Willard Palmer, and he liked it so much he didn't want to change a thing. And that's where I started writing the duet books. And then back in those days, I was the only composer that Alfred had besides Willard Palmer. Amanda Vick was a pedagogue. She wasn't really a composer, but it was Willard and I. So Morty was really needing to have more music in their piano library. And then I had a lot of pressure to put out lots of books in a couple of years, which is really how I got my start as an educational composer. I was very, very lucky, and teachers liked the music. That's where I began.
I love how you stayed open to those possibilities. And that's something that I always talk to my students about. You have a good idea about what you want to do, but don't just because you want to do film music or you want to do music for video games, don't say I won't try that other thing because it might be that the thing that you is going to be the major theme in your life that you're going to be remembered for, that you are most famous for, the thing that you love most is something that you haven't even considered yet. So I love
Sure.
that story. How about how you stayed open to the possibilities that life put before you? How
You
cool.
know, well, Sam, I always tell young people to be as versatile as you possibly can. Learn to play, learn to read chord charts, improvise, take classes in business, take classes in communication, because you never know what opportunities might just land at your feet someday that you never thought about. And if you have various skills in your background, it might give you an opportunity to make a living at something that you never ever considered. But the composing career has been lots of fun for me and a very unexpected adventure.
What are some things that came along that challenged you as a composer, that really challenged you to become better?
I think one project that I wanted to do was a project when I wanted to write preludes in all major and minor keys. It was interesting because at the time, my editor at Alfred felt that the, the preludes I wanted to do, which were intermediate, late intermediate to advanced pieces, just wouldn't sell. And he kind of discouraged me from doing it, but I persisted, and I ended up winning. And so I came out with this collection called 24 Character Preludes. And in that process of writing those pieces, I found it very challenging when I got into keys like G sharp minor. I found it really, really challenging and also very, very helpful in my composing work because I became much more aware of the tactile sense of the keyboard. I've always been one that was very, very aware of making sure that music feels good under the hands. In writing the preludes, it was a real challenge to first of all write something that made sense, that might be only one page long. I was purposely confining myself to write short pieces that were sometimes fairly complex pieces. And that took a very different skill set for me to put into one page or 2 pages elements that I wanted to teach within that piece. I enjoyed that challenge, and I'm so glad that that particular book has been so well received. That was, I think, one of my most intriguing challenges um, over the years in my composing career.
You touched on it a moment ago, but what role do restrictions play for you as a composer?
That's an interesting question because when I was writing, I was one of the co-authors of Alfred's premiere, a piano course. When you're writing for a method, it's an entirely different experience from a compositional standpoint than when I'm writing for my own personal library. But wow, when I was writing for the method, we had to be extremely careful with every note. And I found that at times enormously frustrating as a creative composer, but yet I understood it. We were constantly having to either throw away pieces or revise pieces. And that was due mostly just to the very, very strict pedagogical guidelines that you really need to follow when you're doing a method series. When I first agreed to be one of the writers for the method, I had no idea what I was getting into from the standpoint of a composer. But writing the method was just a completely different experience for me. And, and I'm grateful that I had the opportunity, but I must admit that there were times when I almost tore my hair out, what little I have left, you know, just because it was so frustrating when you thought you had a really good piece that you turned in, and then the pedagogy team decides, well, they want to take this out, they want to take this out, and they change this, and all of a sudden, my piece is not necessarily my piece; it's our piece, and it becomes a different, sometimes a different animal from what I originally envisioned it to be. But then in the end, of course, the music all worked, and so many teachers have told us how much they love the music in that series. So, of course, that always makes me happy.
You have this vast catalog, and none of us can know it all, but you know it all. What do you feel are some hidden gems in your compositional catalog that people should be more aware of?
One hidden gem are my 2 books of toccatas, and I think particularly book one of the Toccatas is such a good book, and most students love those kinds of pieces. They're showy, they're fast, they're fun to play. They develop technique and musicality all in one. That's one hidden gem. I think most teachers don't think of me at all as a jazz composer. I love jazz, and I feel that my three books called Especially in Jazzy Style are really good books that I think often get overlooked. I I think that if they were to go to my website, which is just simply DennisAlexander.com, and look through the various levels that are indicated on the website. I have recordings of every single solo sheet I've ever done. I've got 3 recordings from every collection. They can see the music, they can choose what they feel is most interesting for them. And I often just feel that if teachers would just, or students both, just go to the website and be curious and explore a few things, because you might find your own hidden gem that might appeal to you, that that no one else would think to give you or to have you teach.
Your website is a fantastic resource, from
Oh, thank
videos
you.
to sample books to things that are leveled for us. I'm going to make sure that I link your website down in the description of this video so that it's easy for people to find and they can check it out for themselves.
Thank you. Oh, I would appreciate that.
Dennis Alexander, thank you for being here.
You're so welcome, Sam. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much.